titled, What is Needed to Ensure Zero Trust at the Operational and Warfighting Environments. On the panel this morning, we have our moderator, Lieutenant General Susan Lawrence, United States Army, retired, President and CEO, FCEA International. As mentioned, all bios are available at the FCEA TechNet Indo-Pacific app under today's panel event.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Some of our folks are still over there eating breakfast, so I know they'll wander in here shortly. But thanks for being here with us this morning. Before I get started, first of all, it's great to be here. We're having an amazing TechNet Indo-Pacific, and thanks to our chapter president and the entire FCEA Hawaii chapter here, just doing a first-class show in all of the turns here, so I really appreciate that. I can't imagine that you aren't a member of FCEA, but just in case you aren't, please stop by booth M2324 and see Sean and Shantae, and they will take care of you. So we are really excited to be here, and again, the thing that I'm excited about being the new president and CEO is the young folks that understand the importance of belonging to a professional organization like FCEA International, and we're really working on that hard to get that message out there, so thank you. The second message is we wouldn't be here without the amazing support of our industry partners, and I say that every time I get an opportunity to say it. We've had amazing sponsorships for this event this year, as well as you can see the floor. If you haven't been down on the floor, both here and across over in Tapa Tower, some amazing technologies, innovation solutions. I'm loving some of the names of the new companies that are sprouting up. And, you know, modernization as a service, I thought that was really impressive. But again, thank you very much for your support to FCEA International and specifically FCEA Hawaii here in the area. You know, it went without saying how important zero trust is, but again, every keynote speaker that we've had so far has called out industry and saying we must have industry on the team to help us solve these complex problems as we go forward, and they are. And we're gonna, with this panel this morning, explore the complexity of zero trust and get the industry's perspective on how we're gonna achieve our solutions to the operational and the warfighting level, which is even more complex. Something I heard yesterday for the first time, if we get this right, and we will get this right, it could go a long way to help us with our cross-domain solutions. And that is really critical, especially in a theater like this as we fight jointly and with our allied coalition partners as we go forward. And again, I had not heard that. I'm going to look into it more. It is really, really interesting. And the Department of Defense has committed to getting the right resources behind zero trust solutions as we go forward, to the point that they appointed Randy Resnick to lead the Zero Trust Portfolio Management Office. And Randy is really taken off running and working not just policies important, and we're gonna have to get through some policies, right? But actually executing and doing pilots and finding what the right solution is, you know, failing quickly and getting out there as we go forward. So I'm really excited to see how he's supporting the combatant commands as we go forward, looking at the commercial solutions as we do this. You know, FCEA's mantra is connecting people, ideas, and solutions, and that's exactly what we're gonna need to do to move zero trust forward on the battlefield, and we at FCEA International are committed to it. We have a number of white papers, watch for those. We're gonna be doing some webinars on, from some of our luminaries on the discussion of zero trust and where it can go. So I'm excited today to have this distinguished panel with us, helping us work these solutions as we go forward. First to my left is Major General Retired Pete Gallagher, who's had over 3 decades of national security experience, including the top positions with the Army Defense Information Systems Agency, the Joint Staff, combatant commands, and the special operations community to shape the technology solutions Today, General Gallagher is the Senior Vice President for Technology and Solutions of the National Security and Innovation Solutions Sector of CACI International, an international provider of expertise and technology serving enterprise and mission solutions across our department. And it's really great having General Gallagher because he most recently served on the network CFT for Army Futures Command. He and other key leaders were the ones that have moved Project Convergent forward. And so if you have some questions around that and how Zero Trust is going to be playing in that environment, he will be able to answer it. So General Gallagher, over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, it's an honor to be on a panel moderated by my former boss, and you know, you always want to make sure that you do well on a panel, and especially when you're right next to your boss here. But you know, Lieutenant General retired Lawrence, and you know, a great mentor, a great friend, and absolute right leader at the right time, I think, here for AFCEA International. I'm excited to be here with you. I'm really excited to be at the Hilton Hawaiian Village. You know, 25 years ago, I was Major Gallagher coming out of Command and General Staff College, and I was assigned to Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, the 25th Infantry Division, Tropic Lightning. And unfortunately, at the time, there was no room at the Schofield Inn, so I got a statement of non-availability, and my wife and I were in like panic mode. Where are we going to stay? And somebody recommended the Halikoa, and the Halikoa was booked full. And so, much to our chagrin, we had to spend 25 days at the Hilton Hawaiian Village with our 8-year-old son and our 10-year-old son. And I'm going to say it did not suck. It was really, really nice. It was pretty exciting. It was great to be here as a major, and it's great to be here today. You know, on the other side. Okay, Zero Trust. It is. I think it's absolutely critical going forward to meet some of the needs that we heard yesterday from Josh Rudd. You know, the ability to think, act, and operate differently. You know, what we heard this morning from Admiral Paparo, you know, the ability to kind of analyze data at scale and have the ability to, you know, machine recommendations for human decision-making at speed. The ability to sense, understand, decide, act, and assess at a pace faster than our adversary. You know, the great Chief Information Officer of the Air Force, Lauren Knausenberger, okay, she said the Zero Trust framework is going to allow the services to simplify a warfighting environment. If we can get to the point where we know who you are, and we have our data tagged, and we can get to multi-level security, then we can maybe not have, you know, our commanders out there operating on 22 different networks with 5 screens in front of them. Okay, really, I think, you know, General Lawrence talked about it. The ability to really manage it. The identities of individuals, the identities of sensors, the identities of endpoints, and be able to ensure that, you know, we have a network with a zero trust architecture that allows that decision making. A data-centric ability to make decisions with speed, and that's really what it's all about. And at the J6 panel yesterday, you know, steady drumbeat on transport agnostic solutions for the bits and bytes to flow, and the ability to make decisions at speed when you're operating at the top secret, STO, SAP level, all the way down to the unclassified level and everything in between. And in order to do that with speed, it's got to be data-centric, and you got to have a trust but verify solution set, and that's where Zero Trust comes in. And so I'm honored to be on this panel, and I'm honored to be with my colleagues here from Booz Allen and from Aerospike and the great Dr. Perry on the end, you know, Dr. Patrick Perry Sr., okay, which he's neither a senior nor a doctor, but he's a great friend and teammate, former warrant officer in the Army, so he knows what's going on, okay? But anyway, thank you, Susan, and thank you, you know, esteemed colleagues. Look forward to the panel. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Our next panelist is Imran Umar, a former colleague of mine, a great partner at Booz Allen Hamilton. Imran is a senior cyber solution architect spearheading Zero Trust initiatives in support of the Department of Defense, federal civilian agencies, and the intelligence community. Imran provides technical solutions that enable organizations to move towards a resilient Zero Trust architecture by applying unique tradecraft to determine their current Zero Trust maturity status, identifying key gaps in their architecture, and developing tailored solutions to transition them towards a data-centric security model that enforces least privilege access, Again, Imran, we appreciate everything you do, and it was an honor to work with you, and thanks for being on the panel.
Well, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate the introduction. Imran Umar, I'm a solution architect with Booz Allen Hamilton. I spearhead our zero trust practice across federal civilian, DoD, and Intel. I think that experience has given me sort of a unique perspective on the different types of challenges that different organizations are facing as they move towards zero trust. We have done extensive amount of work with organizations both on the DoD and Intel side, where we're doing everything from a zero trust maturity assessment. A lot of organizations are coming in and trying to figure out where do we start to meet the executive order recommendations. And Booz Allen has built, working with Randy Resnick and team, we have an extensive maturity assessment model that maps back to the NIST security controls, the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and we've been applying that successfully to tell organizations, showcase them like where they are, where they need more work, where are they mature, and how do they build their solutions architecture moving forward. Everybody talks about zero trust as a journey. There is no one solution to achieving zero trust. It all depends on the organization, their use cases, their current investment, the desired architecture, their business needs. All those need to be considered as organizations start adopting zero trust. We've had a lot of good success implementing zero trust type capabilities. I see, Alan Rosner's over there. We have partnered with DISA on the Thunderdome effort, where we're successfully implementing zero trust today. I was very happy to, use my government laptop here at DISA at PAC and connect over our Thunderdome solution, and had a really good experience. We are implementing advanced capabilities like conditional access, taking into account device health status, user identity, behavioral analytics, and making decisions based on that, whether we give you access to a resource or not. These are all the building blocks of achieving a successful zero trust architecture, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm going to pass it on to my colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our third panelist is Mr. Kong Nguyen. Mr. Nguyen leads the public sector for Aerospike and is a strong believer in the power of data to solve the world's most pressing problems. His leadership focuses around enabling government agencies to unleash the power of real-time data, and I've had the opportunity to work with him before, and he is an amazing leader in this environment. He's also responsible for all aspects of business creation and management functions, supporting the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, civilian, state, and local agencies, including go-to-market strategy, revenue attainment, partner development, talent management, pipeline generation, progression strategies, professional services, and account governance. And as many of the topics that we spoke about here at this conference, state and local opportunities and challenges are fraught with gaps that they want us to come assist them with. So I'm listening with one ear from that perspective, and how FCA International can support our local and state governments as well. And so with this, sir, over to you, Mr. Nguyen. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, General Lawrence. As General Lawrence introduced me, I run the VP for Public Sector at Aerospike. We are a real-time data platform that truly drives decision dominance at scale. I started 6 months ago and truly taking this amazing capabilities that we've done within the commercial space. We drive PayPal, we drive Venmo, we drive so many data-intensive organizations that need real-time to drive their operations. And what I see here is real-time to truly drive a tactical edge and autonomy, real-time to drive predictive maintenance, real-time to provide global situational awareness. And I love what General Gallagher said in the last session around data. I feel that I'm here not as an expert on zero trust or cybersecurity, but the impact of that on real-time data to drive decision dominance, okay? I appreciate being here.
Thank you very much. And our last panelist is, again, Dr. Patrick Perry, Sr. I don't know who his publicist is, but they've really promoted him very well.
I'll take them all.
As the Director of Emerging Technology Patrick is responsible for the alignment of usable and secure Zscaler capabilities, providing a dynamic, mission-focused capability with tailored operations to the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. Patrick recently retired from the Army as a Signal Corps Chief Warrant Officer, and we all value the subject matter experts there and our warrant officers after 21 years of service. Throughout his career, he's served as the Chief Technical Advisor to senior military leaders. He specializes in developing innovation and emerging technology solutions in both the strategic to the tactical missions areas globally. Over to you, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So again, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate everything FC has done to get this set up and run such an amazing event. And again, it's really an honor to sit here and be able to talk with everybody up here. And hopefully we'll even get some arguing going on, because I think that's when the panel really gets entertaining.
You're a true warrant officer.
Yeah, and in true warrant officer fashion, again, being a warrant officer, I'm both stubborn and opinionated, so giving me a microphone, getting me in front of people, it should be entertaining, even at 9:30 in the morning. So I look forward to this. So in the end, if you don't know Zscaler, the bottom line really up front about Zscaler is, again, we're a cloud-delivered capability that just provides a proven and elegant solution. The buzzword these days is zero trust, but the bottom line is, again, the proper security for the proper path at all times. I like this idea that everybody's talking about. We need to get to this network agnostic approach. Interestingly enough, networks were designed to be agnostic. We made them not agnostic. So getting to a point, and I think zero trust is starting to drive this, getting to the point to getting a network to be back to being a network, passing packets, and then getting security to be an overlay to that, and again, doing that, that management of where flows should go and why and what, I think we can actually reach, this parity of optimization. And I think zero trust is really kind of going there. So I love the topic zero trust. Obviously, it's a big buzzword out there, great marketing, and a great thing for us to go to as a company. But more importantly, when we look at this panel, the goal of this panel is to talk about, how do we make sure that it's also an operational capability forward to the warfighter element. That's the other part that I think is a really unique opportunity with what zero trust, whether you want to call it a strategy, a framework, an initiative, a concept, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't really matter. But the bottom line is zero trust is giving us the ability to reassess the operational situation, reevaluate what are the norms, what are the facts, what are the assumptions, because everything has changed over the last 25, 30 years. We've been really focused on one type of war per se, and we're really trying to shift to another. So how do we do that, with a common vision, everybody rowing the same way? And zero trust is kind of giving that. And I think the opportunity with the new approaches, and more importantly, the new technologies, so again, these new assumptions, is that what usually in the technology side of operations, the technology differentiators of the enterprise versus the operational environment are really not that big of a gap anymore. There is actually only a couple little traits that need to be accounted for when you want to extend or change the delivery model of a service to the warfighter front end or the enterprise. And I think zero trust is really going to allow us to step back, get out of our comfort zone of what we've been doing for so long, and look at really the new possibilities of doing things different. So I appreciate it. Thank you again.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to you on that because great point, and I think across the Department of Defense we understand that, but you get into Indo-Pacific with the 28 nations and the coalition and the joint. Do those tenets still resonate with you?
Which ones were that, ma'am?
I said, do those tenets still resonate with you, what zero trust will be able to do for this theater?
Oh, 100%. Again, the bottom line, really, when we think about it, data centricity, already stated. Networks themselves don't have a classification level. They don't have a purpose. They're agnostic.
Right.
Data is the only thing that really has a tagging requirement. Yeah. So the ability to just abstract security and this, again, we'll just call it zero trust because that's what everybody wants to call it. When we get the idea that, okay, hey, can we abstract this zero trust approach from the network itself, and then just wherever your network is, whatever it's doing, how many different ways you're doing it, that's one thing, and then I just overlay my zero trust approach onto it. That's what's really going to enable, these high, partner-oriented environments like, this theater, every other theater. It's kind of the same.
Yeah, I agree. Imran, you had talked. I liked how you approached it but especially with the mission partner environment that we find ourselves in today. and the importance of the data sharing. How does that fall with some of the work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on what Patrick was saying, I mean, you know, the speed at which information needs to be shared between coalition partners is very, very important. I mean, you know, I kind of grew up in this industry, and I've seen in the past where we are trying to connect different interoperable networks together and spending all this time to get different mission partners to talk to each other, where, you know, we need to focus on rapid information exchange. There's a, you know, move towards this data-centric architecture where there's a heavy focus on identifying the critical data sets, successfully tagging, labeling those data sets, and then making them available to individuals that need access using things like attribute-based access control. We have seen a lot of progress in this field. You know, most notably the adoption of things like trusted data format that came out of NSA. You know, folks are moving towards implementing that because it's an open standard. Through our NATO allies, you know, United States, we can adopt towards that standard, and allows sort of ubiquitous information sharing by applying those principles.
Yeah, yeah. Kang, as you look in the areas that you're working, again, being able to scale zero trust across and down. Yesterday we said not the tactical edge, but the tactical environment that we're going to find ourselves in. Where do you find some of the impediments to being able to do that?
So down at that tactical edge, I just see that zero trust provides, I guess, data access, right, to the right information, the operator on the tactical edge, the analyst in the tactical cloud, the decision makers back at the command center there. I just feel that at all times we're going to need to have that situational awareness down at the tactical edge, be able to replicate that data at high speed back to another edge, and especially in a DDIL environment, being able to perform AI/ML on that tactical edge at scale, and then still provide that data exchange between the edges there, and then once a connection is reestablished, to be able to replicate that data all the way back to the cloud and back to the core, and having that continuum of data and processing as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. General Gallagher, with your previous hat on and your current hat actually as well, is as we look at the impact of zero trust on JADC2, the criticality of being able to achieve it, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, ma'am. I think, you know, as we heard all of our speakers yesterday, the panel, the J6 panel, you know, from Indo-Pacom to the PAC Fleet Commander to everybody out here has emphasized the criticality of joint all-domain command and control. I mean, all the services are leaning in, and they're really, you know, pushing towards solutions where they can make decisions at speed. And so I think for JADC2, a zero trust architecture is absolutely essential. I think, you know, we've got to assume that we're going to not only be contested in the electromagnetic spectrum, in cyber, and in space, but we're also going to be compromised. If we're going to go to a true, where we want to leverage every means of network transport available to us, you've got to have a data-centric approach that allows you to kind of protect the data, identify the individual, okay, through identity management, but also identify the endpoints. And so an architecture that enables that to happen is going to be absolutely critical going forward. I think, you know, the combination of hardware, software, and those integrated solutions that allow all the services to be able to sense, make sense, and act with that resilient technology that's going to underpin it all. All that being said, you know, the ability to integrate sensors, fuse the information, accelerate the speed of decision making, synchronize all the warfighting functions. None of that's going to happen at multiple levels of security unless we really get out of this kind of non-agnostic approach where we're trying to secure the perimeter. We've got to secure the data, identify who needs what. As Imran said, attribute-based access controls. If we don't get that right, the mission partner environment is not, you know, it's never going to be efficient or effective to meet the 28 nations that the Admiral talked about today. The RIMPAC exercise, the solidarity and the cooperation, the partnerships, it's so critical here in the Indo-Pacom region. we have to deliver a mission partner environment that's data-centric, that's less about, the classification level and more about the information sharing. And I think this approach towards joint all-domain command and control and the ability to fight with allies and partners, delivering those solution sets, I think industry has a way to do it. And I think the partnership and the innovation that comes out of industry to deliver those capabilities to the services with this, zero trust type architecture is going to be key and essential going forward.
I agree. Do we have any questions from the audience, sir?
Yes, ma'am, we have several questions. First question from the audience. The need for zero trust related solutions has skyrocketed over the last year with the federal government executive order and its implementation by DoD and the services. How can leaders see if solutions actually do what the companies claim, and what is still missing from industry solutions?
Very good.
I'll take a first shot at it, and then I think what's important is, as Imran said, it's a journey. And I think yesterday on the J6 panel, Donald Thundercloud, the A6 there from PACAF, he made a comment that they're running zero trust pilots here in the Pacific, and they're really trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, and how do they scale it? How do they kind of scope the problem set? How do they scale it? And then how do they leverage it in order to share information? And I think it's the ability to conduct pilots and have that feedback loop from the operators in the government back to industry, so we can kind of assess the approach and continue to make improvements as we go.
I'll add on to that. I mean, everybody knows this. Zero trust is not a vendor solution buy. It's a framework and an architecture. I think it really comes down to, first and foremost, looking at your use cases and understanding what architecture you need to develop to achieve those use cases, achieve your business goals. To be honest with you, zero trust is not anything new. It's the fusion of different technologies that already exist. What happened over the last several years was, organizations became siloed. You had organizations that had groups that focused on endpoint security, identity access management, visualization and analytics, network segmentation. Zero trust is a fusion of all those capabilities together to provide holistic security and continuous monitoring. So I think organizations need to take a step back, understand the current maturity assessment across the different pillars, build use cases and architectures, prioritize their needs because they can't invest in every single area right off the bat, and then build a holistic solution and an architecture that gets them to a zero trust architecture.
Well, I definitely have a whole bunch to say about this, unfortunately for everybody. But I think that the first step, honestly, is that if I probably asked everybody in the room here to write on a piece of paper what zero trust is to them, we'd probably have 1,000 different definitions. And because there is no common definition, I think it all kind of starts with this, how can a leader see if the solution actually does what it needs to intend? It really, to me, again, my personal opinion is, it's much more important is it achieving the desired effects the leader needs. Whether you call it zero trust or not is really irrelevant. Is it actually achieving these effects? So unfortunately, because there is not one definition of zero trust, we kind of have to stay loose in that on the industry side as well. Unfortunately, everybody's going to call everything zero trust right now because it is the thing everybody is saying they need. So therefore, everything is zero. I got zero trust water right in front of me. If you want to buy some, I'll sell it to you. But so unfortunately, you have to kind of displace that concept anymore and then get back down to what am I trying to achieve? And more importantly, what problem am I solving that got me here to this question anyways? And don't repeat your old mistakes. So again, look back at your problem, look back at how the problem probably is pretty close to the same, but your approach might need to be tweaked to make sure you're not repeating those kind of things. I think when it comes to what is still missing from industry solutions is much more aligned is how are we achieving these effects measurably at scale? Again, I can do a lot in the lab. I can prove something out real fast for almost anybody in here. Boom, I can do exactly what you want me to do on this little lab thing right here. But is it really gonna meet the largest organization in the world's requirements? I'm also a backwards thinker, so to me, I'm 100% agree with Imran. You have to focus on what are you trying to solve, like what is this problem, what is this situation, but I also think that zero trust when you look at it as a strategy, it should actually start from the top side of saying, what are all my things that I'm trying to achieve? Again, the last thing I want to do is build off a whole bunch of siloed solutions for each individual problem. Instead, I need to define what I'm trying to achieve. And let's just, for an example, I need, agnostic network secure access. And that's a lot of buzzwords, so I'm sorry. But the bottom line is that's what I need. Now, let's find one problem that fits underneath that category that my solution can solve right now, and then also adopt and be adapted to solve all my other problems that actually have that same requirement. To me, that's the things that if industry and leaders in the military can come together and get on that same sheet of music, maybe not have a perfect, one only definition, but get on the same sheet of music, I think we're gonna achieve a lot more, a lot faster.
And from a data perspective, I just think there's a primary misconception that, all of the systems need to be segmented, right? And then in reality though, I just think that access control needs to be segmented. However, you need to have that true requirement to have a consolidated data platform of truly actionable data, actionable intelligence there, and historically situational data to drive that situational awareness at that tactical level and the strategic levels there. So there's got to be a lot of coming together here for a common goal, and that's to meet the mission outcomes around certain use cases.
Right. Yes, sir, next question.
Thank you. The next question from the audience is the DoD's Zero Trust Portfolio Management Officer, Randy Resnick, has talked about how there are really no established training classes yet for ZTA for the military, and that DoD is developing its own initial curriculum. How can industry help DoD meet its training needs?
I think industry goes a long way to providing expertise and technology to support all the needs of national security, right? I mean, that's what our company is all about, expertise and technology for the highest priority customers to achieve the national security of our nation. DoD is a big aspect of that, clearly, and I think, cybersecurity experts in, electronic warfare and intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, bring to bear the talent and the training. I think there's a role for industry, to provide services and experts, help build the training curriculum based on best practices that are identified, and help put that together for the department.
Yeah, I think, again, it's a partnership thing. Industry can do a lot when it comes to helping training, again, education, that kind of stuff. But what we don't also want, or you guys probably don't also want in the military, is the industry telling the DoD what these things are. So it's kind of a two-way street. I think there's, again, the first, hey, let's get everybody on this same sheet of music. Let's get everybody, understanding the history that got us here, what we're trying to achieve. And then, hey, industry, can you guys help us help train how to achieve it? I think it's a multifaceted approach. And because there is, 7 pillars of zero trust, it kind of outlines who should probably be the trainers out here in industry on those different things. But as long as it also has a common theme that everything should be working better together now. Not, hey, I got a network security solution that has it's on its own island. It only talks about what it does by itself. It doesn't really talk about how it achieves effects across the other pillars together. So I think we could do a lot more on that side of it, but I think it also is going to take a lot more guidance from the government on what specifically they need from us to make sure that, again, it's following the proper narrative.
Yeah, one of the panelists yesterday talked about at the tactical environment, the speed to a decision is so short that we need to look at it differently. Imran, do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked a lot about it. John was just talking about enterprise visibility and analytics. I think the way we have been collecting data and processing that data needs to change. Generally speaking, if you're talking about cyber situational awareness type solutions, the approach we have always taken is take a whole bunch of sensor data and backhaul it to some big data platform or your traditional SIM. Now that you're talking about tactical edge, you need to start leveraging modern technologies like GPUs and machine learning and artificial intelligence to start doing normalization, enrichment of that data where the data resides, and then be able to build a smart data strategy and send alerts to some sort of a central location. So the whole concept of I'm just going to send all my data to a central repository back in CONUS to make decisions is no longer going to scale or function.
Yeah, I agree. Ben, next question.
Yes, ma'am. Given the traditional timelines for the military to go from an identified solution to fully fielded across the force, it seems that moving to data-centric zero trust will have an awkward in-between state. Can you speak to any insights on network-centric to data-centric zero trust translation tools?
Interesting.
I don't know what translation tool is. I don't know if somebody else does.
I mean, I think one of the big challenges that all the services are facing, right, is the ability to modernize, but you still, they won't be able to pure fleet any of the force. So there's still going to need to be this connection back to legacy somehow. And so I think as we move forward with the zero trust architecture, with, as mentioned earlier by one of my colleagues, with some unique kind of mission threads, what problems need to be solved and how will a zero trust architecture help enable that? There's still going to be a connective tissue and link back to a network-centric connection just because the enterprise is so big. And so I think the translation is going to come in the terms of, of the software algorithms that allow the data to flow, where a zero trust architecture, maybe in a forward instantiation, can connect back to legacy where it may or may not exist. Does that make sense?
I mean, it does. I totally agree with that. I mean, I'll kind of loosely answer the question. I mean, the vision to move towards a future data-centric architecture is the right one. Are we going to achieve it in the next 2-3 years? Probably not. So there's going to be interim steps that organizations are going to have to take. I mean, let's just start by identifying your data, right? I mean, think about the fact that if you're going towards a data-centric approach, the first thing you need to do is identify your data. You need to classify that data. You need to build a mechanism to tag that data and be able to apply attribute-based access controls. It's a good architecture that we're moving towards, but it's not going to be something that we're going to achieve right away. There's going to be incremental progress as we kind of move towards that journey.
Yeah, but, Kang, you work in this world with the data, and it's always been the long pole in the tent, as we say in the Army. The reason we can't get the tent up is because we can't get the data identified right, tagged right, accessed right, and who can have the access to it. And I know you're working on some of that, Kang, as we go forward on the importance of the data analytics and being able to do that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so with that whole data at the tactical edge, I just think that that's where all of the compute needs to happen, right? And as we ingest all of that massive amount of ISR data and everything else, to be able to process that at that tactical edge, having the ability to at scale do AI machine learning there, and then be able to do that training there as well in an online kind of a feature store, and then push that data back to the core or elsewhere, have all of that data synchronized, but you're always going to be training the models back here at the core. You're going to be training with a bunch of historical data and this new real-time data that's coming in from the edge, and we need to be looking at that consolidated view and a view across all of these different platforms from the core to the cloud and then back to the tactical edge as well.
Yeah, I agree. Ben?
Thank you. The next question from the audience. Does the panel see a need to create a set of IEEE standards as a requirement to implement zero trust?
No. I mean, again, just to oversimplify, zero trust is not like a new set of brand new technical capabilities out there in the world. We're not talking about that really with zero trust. We're more talking about the more alignment to the requirements and again, the delivery of capabilities. IEEE defines specific technology. It doesn't define how to deliver a technology. So I just think we're mixing up two different entities per se. I'm sure there's another entity out there right there that can help you, design a, deployment plan or strategy. But I think we're mixing apples and oranges with IEEE and Zero Trust.
Couldn't have said it better. I totally agree.
High five.
All right, we're moving on.
Thank you. The next question. Security always comes with a performance cost. How can we balance zero trust security with the need for real-time analytics and communications?
I'll start with that one if nobody minds.
Sure.
So I think, again, back to what I was saying earlier, this is the opportunity to stop looking at the way we do security. Yes, network and security are friction. It's a gas pedal and a brake pedal. When you push both in your car at the same time, your car does weird things. So it is 100%. You're doing the bipolar of each other. But again, if we get back to the idea of letting a network just be a network, back to that other question, the more I kind of thought about it, network-centric, security, the problem with that is, again, you're telling network devices to try to control access, to control flows, all these kind of things, which again, you're telling a network device to do non-network things, the opposite of what a network thing is. The opportunity of Zero Trust is where we can re-look at it and say, hey, how can I just let my network always optimize itself to be a network? And then how do I overlay security across that agnostically? So I think actually we're gonna see a drastic increase of user experience and a lower of this friction that we see in networking and security because of the way that we can actually go about it if we just look at the problem differently.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Zero Trust framework to have a data-centric approach is going to be the key for that real-time analytics and communication. I don't think it's going to be the inhibitor. I think it's the enabler. Yep. Going back to what Patrick said, you want to get out of kind of trying to only secure the perimeter and assume everything inside is secure when it's really not. And so Zero Trust architecture helps you not only enable decision-making at speed, but allows you to, that continuous monitoring that was talked about earlier, it allows you to assess insider threats. It allows you to maintain the visibility of your network administrators and your security administrators and all those kinds of things, because you're managing it based on the attributes and the access and that identity of the individual. And I think that's going to enable, I believe, the real-time analytics and communications, not inhibit it.
I think it's not just performance costs; it's the user experience that really matters. Yeah. And they talk about Zero Trust being also a cultural change. So you're gonna obviously focus, like a lot of employees are now going to be used to multi-factor authentication. How are they going to like accepting multi-factor authentication before logging onto an application? As we start implementing Zero Trust, especially like Zero Trust network access capability, one thing we've done is done a baselining of user performance before and after. So for example, traditionally, users would have some kind of VPN concentrator that would be sitting on their on-site facility. And because of the pandemic, everybody's working remotely, they would still VPN in to this concentrator that would be sitting on some on-premise location. Now the ZTNA solutions are mostly based in the cloud. Based on our experience around federal civilian and DoD, we've seen significant performance improvement while implementing security. So not only are we doing conditional access by verifying the user's device, validating their identity, behavioral analytics, but we're also giving them a better user experience as we move towards the ZTNA type architectures.
Yeah, I'm just having some serious flashback to Operation Iraqi Freedom when we had a presidential order from the President of the United States to give access to SIPRnet to one of our key coalition partners. And what we did is we built this house and we put in the room what we wanted to give them. And the current Vice Chairman, General Pace, says, you guys got it wrong. You need to give them the key to the house, and that which is truly no foreign goes into that room. So based on that lesson learned, how can we get this one right?
I can start. I remember also when General McChrystal in 2009 did the same thing with the Afghanistan Mission Network, where he said, hey, we're going away from this idea that we block everything by default and access by exception to a flip-flop model where we were just giving free reign access. Now, obviously, that's the opposite of Zero Trust.
Right.
So that maybe that wasn't a good example. But again, when you think of it from the network side of the house, 100%.
Yeah.
The network should be able to flow between all these rooms, no problem. It doesn't mean the individual should be able to roam around the house, walk in any damn door, walk into any door he wants because they have all the keys or all the doors are unlocked. You know, this idea where, again, maybe he should be escorted, he or she. Escorted, even blindfolded. They don't even know how many rooms are in the house. The house is the network. The data might be sitting in a room, and they only need access to that one room. How do we get them as fast as possible to there without exposing anything they're not supposed to?
Yeah.
That, to me, is where we're going to, and technology is already there. Industry's already doing it. Commercial world's already doing it. I think it's much more as how can we get the DoD and a lot of the government recognizing it, understanding the application is the exact same, just different risks, and just start applying it at a faster speed.
Yeah, good points. General, you were there.
I think you both kind of hit the nail on the head. I think that the ability to connect with the coalition has always been tough, right? And I think if we can get to the point where we have solutions that allow us to, a technical solution is one thing, but there's also the foreign disclosure aspect of it and classification guidance and all those types of things. But if we assume at the tactical edge that decisions have to be made with speed, and you can't verify, a counterpart's security clearance, so assume that you have to share the information, and there's other information that absolutely has to be protected. The highest classification intelligence, for example. And so if we can put an architecture in place, it's, again, I'm going to, Patrick's comment, agnostic network, secure access, okay? The ability to use the network, whatever means of transport is available to you, but you have that secure access, and if it's top secret's required, but you can ride the path, you got the right encryption to ensure that the top secret data, the sources, the methods, and all that is protected. If it needs to be, through a cross-domain down to a secure but unclassified network, the data should be able to flow, and based on the attributes assigned to the individual, hopefully we can get to the point where you don't have to have a multitude of networks. And I think, the Air Force CIO said it best. I mean, if we can get to this framework in place, you won't have to have commanders and battle staff with multiple terminals on their desk, with various kind of hardware, perimeter secured networks and segmentation. It's all done through, software algorithms and continuous monitoring.
Does
that make sense?
Kung, any input there?
I think they hit on the key points. I
Yeah.
agree with them.
Okay, all right, Ben.
Thank you. Is there a definitive policy that defines criteria for viable, authorizable, or compliant zero trust solutions for classified mission partner use cases?
I think the policy is in the works. I believe that's what Mr. Resnick is getting after. I know he's identified about 90 different kind of requirements, and they're trying to neck it down, but I think the policy is forthcoming based on what came out of the White House and what the DoD can expect. And you may have a little more knowledge on that.
No, I totally agree. I think it all starts with, Randy and his team working on the policy and for organizations to then start implementing those. So they are actively working it. We've had several discussions with them. And I think, the zero trust implementation, you can build the zero trust architecture, but you need that governance and policy on what you're implementing. How are you, classifying the data? Who's accessing the data? And that needs to be standardized, and I think DoDCI is doing a great job in getting that accomplished.
Yeah, I don't know if there's specific policy, but I think this is a combination of a couple policies. Policies on, again, data security, and then a policy of information sharing to partners. So I think we have a combination here. And again, I don't know if there's one policy that's going to rule them all that accounts for both those to do it, in this one common piece of paper per se, but I don't know anything more than that.
Okay. Ben?
General Lawrence mentioned the potential for zero trust to ameliorate CDS challenges. Does the panel see the same potential to address the many mission partner networks challenges that are so critical to this theater?
Yes.
Yes, I do as well. I really think we've got to get to a much more effective and efficient way of connecting a mission partner environment with our coalition partners. Again, there are the cross-domain solution. The NSA raised the bar standard for cross-domains. The fact that, and it came up yesterday, I think Thundercloud mentioned this as well during the J6, that we need to get to software-enabled encryption and cross-domains, even though I know there's a concern there with regression testing at NSA, and so kind of figuring that out. How can we ensure that the data can flow from the highest level classification down to the lowest level, and people get the information they need? It's going to be a combination, I think, of a zero trust architecture. You've got the continuous monitoring. We have, less cumbersome and less clunky cross-domain solutions that allow it to protect the data, not necessarily worrying as much about the network that it rides upon. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. Again, breaking it down to two different things. Cross-domain solution, while it's a military term or a government term per se, in the commercial or industry world, it's just data loss prevention. It's DLP. DLP is being used all over the world in many different ways. It's obviously there's a little bit more risk, so it needs to be a little bit more fine-tuned and a little bit more, evaluation before you just go full-blown between like an unclassified to a TS network. But we're not talking about a new concept that can only be created in a lab that the military runs. So if you look at how industry is already doing DLP, I think there's lots of opportunity to really improve upon how we're doing it. The other part of it is again, when you look at how we solve this same problem in the non-technology side of the world, in the paper world, again, we move classified data into unclassified spaces and through unclassified spaces all the time. We have approaches to do this. So if we just take that same, analogy and then turn into the technical, delivery of the capability, I think there's a lot of ways to change how we're looking at this problem. Again, you're trying to make sure data doesn't leak to the wrong person or into the wrong environment. You might not actually even need DLP. Maybe you just want to do something like browser isolation. Because again, if it's to a trusted entity, why can't somebody on an unclassified device look at a classified piece of data that never actually touches that device? Because it's all in browser isolation. I think there's lots of opportunities if we look at the problem slightly different against the new technology capabilities out there.
Yeah, good point. Kang, are you seeing any of those advancements in what you're doing?
You know what? We do run most of the capital markets, and these are areas where I should go back to my commercial brethren and get some of those best practices and come back to the government here and share what we're doing around data and the movement of data across the entire enterprise, across the entire globe, in regulated industries as well, and bring it here for,
Yeah, that would be great.
for
Very
discussion.
Yeah, very interesting. I didn't write that question because that word that's in that ameliorate. I'm just an Iowa farm girl.
The next audience question is, today we establish trust for information sharing using a high assurance key, either asymmetric PKI or symmetric using KMI. Given that we don't share these trust anchors with any partner nations except Five Eyes, how do we collapse domains with countries where we have minimal information to verify identity or even build a credential to grant access and authority?
Yeah, great question. When the Admiral was talking about his partnership with 28 countries this morning, that just flashed across, how do you do that? Chief, any thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think, again, there's a mixture of different ideas here. In the end, all we're talking about is, again, the common approach to assure, and again, back to zero trust, you gain assurity through lots of different methods now. And again, it's how do you compile these methods and how do you make a good decision to move data to the right person at that point. So I think there is, unpackaging it and stop worrying about is PKI and that kind of stuff the only solution. What are the other opportunities in identity or context from the device? Or even, again, how do we create hooks into, the personnel system to, capture this person has already been read on to our blah, 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 blah. I think there's lots of opportunities to just look at it differently because technology can evaluate it differently. Yes, there'll always be some level of encryption, thrown in there, but I don't think that is the decision-making approach at all times.
So I think this kind of goes back to the original point I was making. A lot of work is being done around the whole concept of trusted data format, which is this open standard that came out of NSA. And the whole concept there is coming up with a strong encryption algorithm that is standard. So if you're encrypting a Microsoft file or Adobe PDF or something and sharing it with coalition partners, it's being done using this common standard, so we're not sort of vendor locked in. So there's tons of work being done there around open data format, open trusted data format, and I think that's going to help solve some of these challenges that people are talking about.
Right. Anything else? Okay. This is an industry panel, and it's just great hearing your perspectives and your experiences we're going through this. But let me turn this around. What do you each need from the Department of Defense to be able to help solve and deliver this zero trust environment?
I'll take a stab at that. I think, industry is always trying, we're always trying to provide the best solutions possible, whether it's providing experts or providing technology, a combination of hardware, software, or an integrated solution to meet the customer needs. I think what we need from the department is clarity of problems. What problems are they trying to solve? How do they want to go about implementing a zero trust architecture within the department, and then allow industry to put their thinking caps on to come with the best viable solutions. I think as Imran said, it's not going to be, there's clearly they don't want vendor lock, and clearly that they want solutions that are going to enable them to meet the mission requirements. And like Patrick said earlier, I don't think it's about delivering zero trust. It's zero trust enabling mission, right? The mission of the customer and what do they want to accomplish. And we heard a lot of it over the last couple days. That, being able to access any network, being able to make decisions at speed, having the access to the data analytics where the machine is doing the recommendations where it makes sense, and you accelerate the decision of that human to leverage that capability, because the machine, that combination of hardware, whatever it is, the software algorithms, the access to the data, whether it's cloud enabled or edge devices, that it's accelerating the speed of decision making. And that's, again, as the Admiral said this morning, that the ability to sense, understand, decide, act, and assess at a pace faster than the adversary is what the problem, the wicked problem that the department's trying to solve. Project Convergence, they're out there now trying to solve, those types of problems. Sensor to shooter in a coalition environment. How do they accelerate the kill chain? Sensor to other types of effects and synchronization of the warfighting functions to include logistics. All of those decision aids require access to data and algorithms that will help accelerate the speed. And so you're taking kind of getting out of the intuitiveness of decision making, whether it's enabled by knowledge, and the knowledge comes from access to the data on echelon wherever you need it. And it's not necessarily a common operational picture where everybody sees the same picture. It's access to common data where the individuals or the leader or the battle staff sees the information they need to see to make the decisions they need to make.
Yeah, so I would say two specific things. Number one, we are all technologies here. We are able to stitch stuff together, whether it's identity access management, visibility and analytics. We can stitch all these tools together. Where Department of Defense can help is around more guidance around standardization, governance, and policy. I think they're starting to go down that path now. But coming to some sort of an agreement and putting out governance policy around data encryption, around data standardization, data tagging would be very beneficial. Second, I think that continued collaboration between different services and industry partner is needed. So this exchange of ideas is happening here. I think we need more of these at a different scale and level. So I think those are the two things I'm going to highlight.
Yeah.
The part you just mentioned there, I think, is important. And I was at an NDIA panel back in June, and with Susan Breyer-Joyner, who's actually running the JAD C2 cross-functional team for the Joint Staff. And one of the discussions came up, and it came up yesterday as well in the J6 panel. As the department rolls out the JAD C2 implementation plan, most of the plan itself is classified. And they're looking to revise the plan this year based on COCOM Commander's integrated priority list and looking at the FIDEP over the next 5 years, what are the tangible things that they want to align resources towards? I think what industry could also use from the government is classified sessions in forums like this or other types of forums where we can come together and share the real requirements at the classified level so then we can kind of take the next steps. Because a lot of it's, if you don't have the dialogue to understand, the classified requirements, it becomes a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I want to just piggyback on the Project Convergence 22, I think is a perfect example of what I think industry needs more of. Because again, what we're seeing over there, at least, from our vantage point, is that there's more testing. There's more operationally testing, not lab testing anymore. We're doing, not talking. And that's what needs to happen a lot more of in access to industry. I think Colonel Geronimo said it yesterday, follow what USASOC is doing in the sense that they brought in a whole bunch of industry, loads of them, and said, hey, here's our problems. What do you think you guys can do to help us solve them? And we're not going to talk about this a whole bunch. We're taking it straight to PC22. And you know what? If it doesn't work, that was your stage. You either broke your leg or you looked great. And I think more of that is what's really needed. And the other part of it, and again, this is one of my complaints when I was in the military, is getting more uncomfortable at times. The government needs to get more uncomfortable and needs to work with industry about being uncomfortable. There's still a lot of repetitive, same old things, just with a new two-word, you can probably guess the two-word combination here, in front of the solution. But it's still the same solution. In the South, they would call that lipstick on a pig. But, and unfortunately, because the government doesn't like to get uncomfortable. Decision makers don't want to take uncomfortable risks. And I think that's what industry, if you want industry to bring in innovation, you've got to get uncomfortable because it's going to not sound the same. It's just not going to be the same. That's the whole point of innovation. If everybody just followed a standard, you would never get innovation. That's the whole idea. They're literally opposite of each other. So if you want industry to bring you innovation, you've got to open your mind and get uncomfortable with it.
Yeah, good points. Con?
Yeah, so you were talking about, General Gallagher, the Project Convergence. Over the last couple of months, we've been working with Navy on Project Overmatch. We've been talking to the Air Force around ABMS. Same goals around ZADT2, but there's just not this overall communication and collaboration amongst them. And then, yes, you've got representatives from Army, Navy, and Air Force on those different panels there, but I just think it's not making outside of those areas to different commands that are being driven by Project Overmatch or whatever. I just feel that we need to come together with industry and how do we innovate properly and introduce new capability that could actually accelerate all of this JADC2 data fusion, sensor fusion capability across the board as well. Just got to be more collaboration, easier ways for innovative companies, even small companies, to come in. Yes, there are OTAs, yes, there are servers and all of that stuff, but you've got to be a professor to figure out how to go through phase 1, 2, 3 and make that happen, right? So we've got to have better collaboration and easier access for innovative capabilities to come into the DoD and make an impact on the mission there.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Project Convergence, the Army refers to it as a campaign of learning, right? And so one of the things that during some of the discussion at AUSA last month is, industry, it's a campaign of learning for industry as well. And I think after an exercise of that scope and scale, there's going to be a lot of things that worked, and there's going to be a whole lot of things that didn't work. And what problems were, was the Army and the Joint Force, and even with the partnership with the UK and Australia that were, they had a coalition network out there, and they're working through some coalition mission threads. There are things that probably worked extremely well, and then there are things that didn't. And then, so how do they conduct an after-action review when it's all said and done with industry, so we can kind of, okay, if this is what worked, we want to obviously sustain that, but the things that didn't work so well, we want to improve upon. A call to industry to come back with solutions to help meet those needs, I think, is key.
Very good. Ben, let's take one more question. We've really worked the panel hard today.
Thank you. The final question from the audience. Could the panel share their thoughts on how to implement zero trust in legacy networks without gutting the existing security infrastructure, while also avoiding simply piling new hardware and software on top?
Well, I guess I can start. I guess it goes back to, first and foremost, recommend that organizations start. I mean, I know people don't like the word assessment, but really conduct a zero trust maturity assessment to figure out what capabilities you have across all of those different pillars and where you need to invest in. Identify your most strategic goals that you're trying to achieve, and obviously use your investment dollars smartly in areas that you want to tech refresh, things that are coming end of life, so you're not exposing yourself to vulnerabilities. To me, we've seen organizations that have already invested a lot of money on capabilities that can help them achieve their zero trust goals. So the thought is, don't throw out those capabilities. You can build upon those. And we've been doing that successfully with a lot of different organizations where we come in and do a holistic analysis of their existing architecture and sort of build this incremental approach to moving towards zero trust by introducing new capabilities where it makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely have an opinion here. So in the end, again, my assumption is when people say legacy networks, we're not talking about like old school frame relay, circuit switching, that kind of stuff. We're talking about just older stuff, but probably in the last 10 to 15 years. And really, when you still look at that, guess what? It's all still kind of the same. It just runs faster now. So it's still primarily all IP based. Nothing is really using frame relay or old protocols like IPX or anything. So you still have a common, placemat to work with here. We're not talking about doing anything crazy. You can look at the problem more of is how can I deliver, what people love to also say is this SecDevOps kind of approach in integrate it but isolate it into my operational environment at the same time. So it's not going to really impact. I might have to tweak, my environment and how it's working. But again, if we're looking at security now as an overlay, not built into it, period, you can overlay, say TLS across all this stuff without actually changing it. And the only really difference anymore is, as you start pulling out the old stuff because you don't need it to do its security functions, because now it's just become another router for you, you can actually just take it off and the only impact will be improvement because you're removing a hop on the line. So I think, again, with today's technology, there's more than enough opportunity to actually just evaluate right on top of your environment right now with no risk to the old stuff, just a proven, I'm now achieving these effects side by side to data that's not following. And again, because the opportunities in technology, what industries has out there now, is just way different than how we designed 20 years ago.
Just one last thing to add to that. Often I run into this experience where people don't have a full understanding of the potential of their legacy devices. So vendors have caught up and they're upgrading those devices with new firmware and stuff. A perfect example of that is a lot of those network devices were doing pretty static ruled analysis through ACLs and things of that nature. Zero trust by nature is very dynamic, so you need to be able to do like more application layer inspection. And a lot of the vendor products that were traditionally considered as legacy have been doing a lot of modernization. So I guess point being is to rethink and reevaluate your existing capabilities, have a full understanding of the potential, and then make smart decisions based on that.
Mm-hmm. Kung, any final thoughts there?
Okay.
All right, sir. General?
No, I just thank you again, ma'am,
Thank you.
for hosting a great event. I mean, this is, this region is obviously critical to the national defense strategy that was recently published, and it's our pacing threat is in this region, and with everything that the department's trying to do, I think it's going to take a team. It's going to take a team of teams. Industry, academia, and the government all kind of coming together, and AFCEA and events like this is where it all kind of comes together, and I think it's great. So, sir, you have your hand up.
I have a question. What about a DoD browser for zero trust?
DoD browser.
Instead of using Chrome, Bing, whatever, zero trust.
Yeah.
For a DoD browser.
So I think Patrick mentioned this earlier. I don't necessarily think you need to put out a DoD browser, but you can adopt technologies like browser isolation that protects you a lot of organizations like DISA, for example, has implemented what's called CBI, browser isolation capability. And you're basically sandboxing your browser. So you're no longer downloading all those malicious files locally on your machine. You basically get sort of a video feedback of what you're looking at, yahoo.com or whatever. So those protections are in place. So it's not necessarily building a new browser, but how can you adopt capabilities like browser isolation to protect yourself?
Yeah, and just to add on, is unfortunately, again, not every application is web-based. So now you have a zero trust browser that can help you with, again, if the DoD ever wanted to try to run a browser program, which again, if you look at Google and Microsoft, they're kind of struggling doing it. I don't know if DoD can do it better. So I don't know if that's the right business to get into. But again, the other part is we probably sitting on, let's just randomly say 50-50. Half our applications are web-based that could use that. The other half are not. So do you really want to run two totally different types of approaches? And how would they work together? So I think there's a lot of things to decompose with that approach. But honestly, and again, I'm a pessimist a little bit on this part, is I don't know if the DoD should get in the business of building its own Chromium-based browser and then trying to maintain every single part of it. I just don't think that's the right business to be in. I think the DoD should get out of the business of maintaining and sustaining things that the whole world is doing at a 10 million developer scale, and just leverage it, manage policy, secure their data, get more focused on the data itself, not building, running infrastructure anymore.
All right, well, let's recognize this great panel. As I said, we really worked them hard today. Thank you very much.
Hey, as you make your rounds to the various vendor booths, just booth 506 has the coolest swag. Okay, you want some really neat sunglasses? Just stop by the CACI booth. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
General Lawrence.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. General Lawrence and the entire panel, on behalf of AFCEA International and AFCEA Hawaii, mahalo for a great discussion on how industry can help DoD achieve zero trust. Thank you for your thought leadership in this area as we continue to connect people, ideas, and solutions throughout this conference on our most pressing national security and defense issues. If we're going to achieve JADC2, we're going to protect our critical infrastructure and our national critical information. We need to rapidly move towards zero trust principles, and you all showed us a glimpse of the path and a glimpse of how we can move forward to get there. So AFCEA will provide a donation to the Friends of Windward Wounded Warriors on behalf of all of our panelists and guest speakers this week. And we're also going to present you with the coveted TechNet Challenge coin, highlighting this 37th TechNet Indo-Pacific. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring the MC back up, so please remain seated while he gives us some what's going to happen for the rest of the day.
I'll trade you. You can have these covered.
Thank you.
No, we're good.
Thanks. Paul.
All right. Again, thank you, panel, for the excellent conversation and discussion that we had. So I want to put out a few admin remarks before we conclude. So if you haven't done so already, please download the AFCEA app. It's for all the conference. You can get all the dates, events, et cetera, who's talking. And it's supported by KPMG. So we still have tickets available for the PAL ANA event later tonight at 6 p.m. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, it's still available for purchase. So be sure to catch Brigade General Bartholomew's U.S. Army Pacific G3 Director presentation. It's in the Tapa Ballroom at 12:30.
Can we check that time, Ben? We actually had the luncheon first, don't we, at 11:30, and then the guest speaker?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. The networking lunch is 11:30 to 1. The speaker presentation begins at 12:30.
Great, thank you, sir. All right.